back in 2011, I launched into space with a belief that we have all the technology, we have all the resources necessary to solve many, if not all, the problems facing our planet. And I know that's a bold statement. It's a statement that I believe is true. But if it is true, then why do we still face so many critical issues, so many critical problems? And I believe one of the main reasons why we still face so many critical issues and problems, in spite of our ample technology, in spite of our ample resources, lies in our inability to effectively collaborate on a global scale. And this is the International Space Station. It is quite arguably the most complicated, complex structure ever built. It was built in space by 15 diverse nations. Some of these nations weren't always the best of friends. They had to overcome different political systems, different cultural bias, different languages in some cases, and they somehow were able to set aside their differences and work together to accomplish this amazing feat. This is, it's bigger than a football field. If it was on the ground, it would weigh over 1 million pounds. It's one of the most capable laboratories in the world. And it is really one of the greatest achievements of humanity. And so we have to ask ourselves also, if we can do that in space, if these nations can join together and do an accomplishment like this in space, imagine what we can do by working together here on the ground. And so how do we apply that to life on Earth? And one of the ways we apply it is by taking a shift in perspective, to zoom out past the worm's eye view, past the bird's eye view, and all the way out to a big picture, long-term perspective, a perspective that I call the Orbital Perspective. And this is a cover of a book that is coming out, and I spent about 250 pages in the book explaining what the Orbital Perspective is, and we don't have time to go through 250 pages today. But what I basically tried to do is take the example of the International Space Station, the example of international cooperation and collaboration that built this incredible structure, this incredible facility, and apply it to, bring it back down to Earth and apply it to our rapidly developing, hyper-interconnected society that we're living in today. And they say that a picture's worth 1,000 words. You can see the Isle of Man right about there, but if you squint, but you don't have to squint because the same day I tweeted a different picture. This was a tweet I sent. I don't know if you can read that. It says, Isle of Man from space for my friends Chris Stott and Davey Knowles. So, and I find it really interesting. It's one of the rare days where there's not clouds at the Isle of Man, but there is a cloud right over Douglas right there. So, so I don't know if it was such a great day. About a month before I returned to Earth, now I was up there for half a year, and I spent any available free time I had, which wasn't much, but any available time I did have, I spent with my face plastered to a window, looking back at our incredible, beautiful Earth and pondering the answer to the question I asked before, if we have the resources and the technology to solve the problems, why do they still exist? And one of my favorite places to plaster my face to the window is this place called the Cupola. And the Cupola is a windowed observatory on the bottom of the space station. And I was taking some pictures for a time-lapse video project that I was working on when one of these pictures really caught my eye. And in this picture, which you're about to see, you're going to see a long, illuminated line snaking across this large landmass for hundreds and hundreds of miles. And I didn't know what this was. I initially thought it might be a river, maybe it was moonlight reflecting on a river. But it turns out this is not a natural reflection at all. And I've always been one of these astronauts that say you can't see any borders from space. Apparently I'm wrong, because what this actually is the man-made border between India and Pakistan. And seeing this from space, seeing this scar on the beautiful landscape, seeing this barrier to collaboration clearly visible from space had a huge impact on me. For the 50-plus years that humans have been flying in space, astronauts and cosmonauts have commented on how beautiful, how tranquil, how peaceful, how fragile the Earth looks from space. And these are not cliches that astronauts say because it feels good. It truly is beautiful and moving to see our planet from space. And the point is not that we could look down and see a man-made border between India and Pakistan. The point is that we could look down at that same area and feel empathy for the struggles that all people face. We can look down from our orbital perspective and realize that each and every one of us is riding through the universe together on this spaceship that we call Earth. We're all interconnected, that we're all in this together, and that we're all family. And when we look at the beauty of the planet we've been given, we are really faced with a sobering contradiction, an undeniable sobering contradiction. On the one hand, you can clearly see the beauty of the planet that we've been given. On the other hand, are the unfortunate realities of life on our beautiful planet for a significant portion of its inhabitants, those that have clean water to drink and have food to eat, the poverty and the conflict that exists on our beautiful planet. And so what do we do about this? Okay, so here's another barrier that is probably visible from space. And this, last night I was in Berlin. Last night, if you didn't know, was the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And that had a big impact on me as well. And what you're seeing in this picture is about 8,000 helium-filled balloons, lit balloons, that line the whole route of route of where the wall was. And so at a predetermined moment when the wall fell, all these balloons were released into the air. And you know, this is in 1987. I crossed through Checkpoint Charlie, and I visited East Berlin as a U.S. military officer. And as I passed through that wall, as I passed through that really incredible barrier to collaboration, I passed through something that was keeping creative, innovative minds on both sides of the wall from being able to work together to solve their shared problems, their shared challenges. And so to contrast that, though, you know, being a military officer and training for most of my adult life to fight the Russians, it was really interesting when I found myself on the 50th anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's spaceflight at the base of a Russian rocket from the same launch pad that Yuri launched from, and from this previous top-secret Soviet military installation. And as I looked, and this rocket was about to take me and my 2 Russian military crewmates to space. And as I looked up at this rocket, I saw an American flag on it. And to me, that was just this really, really compelling example of the power of setting aside our differences and working together to do something extremely meaningful. And so, like I said, last night I was at the Brandenburg Gate. I was at this celebration, and it really was an amazing. Somehow I sneaked up on the stage. That's me right there. This is Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales. There's Nobel Peace Laureate Mohamed Yunus. There's Martin Schulz, the president of the European Parliament. There's Mikhail Gorbachev. And so there was many, many people, I think over 1 million people actually came, and at the same moment we all released our balloons. And what that signified was on each balloon was written the wall that you want to break down. And not all these walls are physical, right? There's political walls, there's economic walls, there's cultural walls. And so these are all things that keep us from achieving our full potential as a human species. And that signified, it wasn't just the fall of the Berlin Wall, it was a symbol of all the walls that need to fall throughout the world to help us achieve our destiny. So how did it work in the International Space Station program? How it worked was through personal relationships. So once we decided to work together and once people got to know each other, personal relationships developed, and those personal relationships carried us through many of the bumps in the road, many of the crises that would come later. Now, you know, it was a formal program, so there were formal treaties, there were formal contracts, but it really was the personal relationships that allowed us to build a level of trust that when the inevitable bumps in the road came, we could weather that storm and we could work our way through that. And so this is a key point. I mean, nations are not always going to agree with each other. And when they do agree on things, it's really important to take those things that we do agree on, those low-hanging fruit, and to work together on it. And by doing so, we start to form personal relationships, trust starts to build, and that's a platform for us to start to work on the things that we don't agree on. But we don't do that. We as a global society tend to do the exact opposite. We tend to take the things that we agree on and use those as leverage against the things that we don't agree on, which really is backwards, is a backwards way to think about it. So rather than using the things that we agree on, in the case that I put space exploration, instead of using that as leverage to put pressure on the things that we don't agree on, what happens if we embrace them? What happens if we expanded them? What happens if we took those things that we actually agree on and start working together? Again, what happens is personal relationships form, trust gets built, We learn each other. We learn that maybe we were mistaken about some of the differences that we had. They weren't differences at all. And that, again, becomes a foundation that we can build and hopefully use to work on the things that we don't agree on. So we take my way and your way, and hopefully we can synthesize it into our way. And so when we look at our planet from space, we see a series of continuous land masses separated by water with an island here or there scattered about. But what we all know is those continuous land masses are made up of a series of sovereign nations. And all these sovereign nations, when it comes to the end of the day, do things that are in their best national interest. So I know that all nations, or most nations, are open to doing things for the greater good of the world. But in those cases where they have a choice between what's good for the world and what's good for the world, but it will be at their own expense, the expense of their own national interest, that they will choose their own national interests every single time. And what that means is either they didn't pan back far enough, zoomed out far enough to see the big picture benefits, they didn't take a long enough term view on things to see the long-term benefits, or there really aren't any long-term benefits. And I don't think nations are really equipped to make that type of sacrifice. Individuals are. That happens all the time. And that's why I think that it's more likely to have a group of individuals affect real change in the world than it is a group of nations, although it is possible to have, as we've seen with the International Space Station, to have a group of nations. But we live in a different world right now. It's never been easier for us to organize, to reach out to people of different political backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, different geographic locations, and to work together and take discrete efforts and combine them and accelerate them and amplify them. It's never been easier to self-organize around great causes, around great efforts, because of this new interconnectivity that we have, this new connectedness that allows us to seamlessly, economically, and almost effortlessly collaborate and cooperate with people on the other side of the planet. And imagine what's going to happen when we connect the 5 billion creative minds to their internet, to the global conversation that aren't there now. And when we look at this interconnectivity from the orbital perspective, we realize that the internet is basically the nerve center of spaceship Earth. And I think we're going to see a lot of developments from that coming down the pipe. So I want to just say a couple of quick things, because I know we're running out of time. But it should be obvious that you don't have to be in orbit to have the orbital perspective. You don't have to be in space to realize that we need each other. You don't have to be in space to realize that by being open to new innovative partnerships, new innovative ideas, that solutions can come from some radically different places that we never really expected. And although you don't have to be in orbit to have the orbital perspective, I'm involved with a group of visionaries that are trying to help democratize space travel. So yes, you don't have to be in orbit to have the orbital perspective, but the more people that get the opportunity to fly in space, I think the better off we're all going to be. So this is an effort, just real briefly, that is a crowdfunding campaign to send as many people as we can on suborbital flights so that they can get this view of the planet from space. And the reason why we want to do that is we believe that this could have a transformational effect, not just on the individuals, but it could spread widely. And so the person or the people that we want to pick are those people who can best describe how they're going to take that experience and make the world a better place. But probably more importantly, how they're going to share that experience with as many people as possible so that they can inspire people to go out and make a difference. And so it's at spaceshipearthgrants.com, and like I said, it's a crowdfunding campaign, and it's something that we're really excited about. So I'm coming to a close here, and one of the reasons why we want to send as many people to space as possible is because it really gives you this sense that real change is possible. And that's really the first step to affecting real change, is believing that it's possible. So I just want to share with you a couple of things that I believe are true. I believe it's possible to live in a world without poverty. I believe it's possible to live in a world where everybody has access to clean water, nobody goes to bed hungry every night. I believe it's possible to live in a world where nobody dies from preventable and curable diseases, where all the children are educated. And I believe that we do live in a world where the possibilities are only limited by our imagination and our will to act. It is within our power to reduce the suffering and the hardship that exists on our planet. And that's because nothing is impossible. Not only is every truly great accomplishment at first seemingly impossible, it's seemingly a little bit crazy. And for probably thousands of years, people would have thought it was impossible to fly the moon simply because it had never been done before, but we all know that it is possible. When it was time to come back to Earth, and it's interesting, I'm sure you've all heard of Davy Knowles' song, Roll Away, right? So it's about coming back to this island someday, right? Well, I was listening to that song in space, and it helped me define what home meant to me, because to me, the island that I was coming back to was Earth. And so as it was time to leave the space station, me and my 2 Russian crewmates climbed into our Soyuz spacecraft. We wiggled ourselves into our seats. We had our knees in our chest. We undocked from the space station. We did a couple of laps around the planet. And as we passed the south tip of South America, we fishtailed our spacecraft around to point the engines backwards. And as we did, I saw this crescent moon go by my window. We had this fiery ride through the atmosphere. The parachutes opened that threw us all around. We went slamming into the ground. We bounced, we flipped over, we rolled, and we ended up on our side. And as we were on our side, I was on the bottom, so now my window, which is right here, is facing the ground. And out of my window, I saw a rock, a flower, and a blade of grass. And I remember distinctly thinking to myself, I'm home. And what was interesting was I was in Kazakhstan. So to me, at that moment, my home was no longer Houston, Texas, where I live. My home was Earth. I just want to end by saying you don't have to be in orbit to have the orbital perspective, and by working together, we don't have to accept the status quo on our planet. I want to thank you for all that you're doing, all that you will do to help make life on our beautiful planet as beautiful it is visibly from space. So thank you.